Um, so just quickly, and then I'm going to hand it over to Becky. Just our agenda for today, we're going to talk about the results nationally and in Colorado. What does it mean for climate and public lands? How will we respond? What's our plan at this point to respond to this? And then we're going to announce a new program that we're launching around legislation this year. So that's kind of our agenda for the day, or for the next bit here. And we try to keep these short, but we want folks to chime in and engage. So please feel free to do so. Raise your hand or hop in if you have questions. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to our fearless leader, our newly elected to her state legislature. So not all bad things happened last week. Becky Edwards.
Thanks, Sarah. And I'm, like I mentioned, I'm here in Helena for the next couple of days doing some legislator training, and I am down here in the corner, and my earbuds are not working. So just bear with me. But yeah, we wanted to be able to gather and just be able to connect. I think at the staff level, it was, kind of a funny story, funny, sad story. We were watching the results come in, and just to preface all these conversations as well, we're a 501c3, so we're not active in electioneering. I think, the views that we're going to talk about today and some of the issues certainly have a lot of implications for our organization in terms of climate and public lands protection, but also, our organization is comprised of folks who identify as women, as mothers, and we could not help but feel, very disappointed in the rhetoric and, terrible bills, terrible comments that unfortunately some members of elected administrative leadership have been passing along over the last 8 years. So it was disappointing for us to have to kick off our staff retreat last week by hopping on a plane the next morning after seeing some of these really sad results. But luckily we were able to be together as a staff and kind of process some of our feelings and figure out how does this affect our work? How does this affect women, not only in the 3 states we operate in, but across the nation? And what kind of changes, if any, will we be making as we move ahead to address this new climate that we find ourselves in, both at the administrative level and also within the Senate and the House federally? So I would like to say that it's been a joy to be here in Helena the last couple of days. And Montana, where I live, has traditionally been a very purple state. We've always, not always, but we've had many Democratic governors. We just lost our longtime Democratic Senator Tester. And, I think Montana really prides itself on its ability to just appreciate and support your neighbor and not tell each other what to do. And so we've always been pretty independently minded. And so it has been disappointing over the last handful of years to see a lot of, national rhetoric and things that don't really, apply to most folks in Montana, Colorado, Arizona, other places in the Mountain West in terms of national politics that don't really have a lot of relevance on our day-to-day lives. And to see that pervade and take away the really good work that a lot of local politicians have been doing and elected officials is disappointing. But I think what we came to as a group and what I'm excited about as we move ahead, both as an organization, but also just as women, is here in Montana, we just picked up 12 new House of Representative members that will certainly vote for my best interests, for my daughter's best interests, which is a huge increase in our state legislature. So all is not lost. And I think we're continuing to see that in other states as well. Um, but as it relates to our work at the Mountain Mamas, I would like to bring out a couple of glimmers of hope here. This new administration that's coming in is typically not friendly to climate and public lands work. Unfortunately, we saw two very unfortunate Department of the Interior secretaries under Trump's previous tenure, which will adversely affect a lot of our public lands work and a lot of our climate work. We have had the joy of having Secretary Deb Haaland in that position for the last 4 years, and another amazing woman, Tracy Stone Manning, who's actually from Montana, was our BLM director, is our BLM director. And under her tenure, she passed one of the most progressive new rulemaking um, uh, updates that the BLM's ever seen that celebrates working towards a healthy climate and protecting our public lands, not just for the highest, best monetary value, but protects them for their wonderfulness and perpetuity in terms of the ability to recreate and preserve that landscape for generations to come. So that will be challenging. We will be keeping an eye on that, and we will be raising our voices as it relates to some of the appointments, both at the Department of Energy, Secretary of the Interior, and more. And I know that results did not go the way that we wanted to see them nationally and in a lot of states. But I think one thing that we took away from the election is what we've always known, which is women have power. And we will be utilizing, advocating, organizing ourselves, and wielding that power as we move ahead. And as it relates to climate work, and Sarah, chime in here as you would like as well. We're reassessing where we're at. It will be a little bit more challenging, I think, to be able to utilize some federal funds to, for instance, expand EV infrastructure, get more EV school buses on the road. That does not mean our work stops. That only means we're going to find different routes to get to where we want to go. So that we will continue to make sure, Sarah grows, and everybody I probably on this call and others know that we've launched a really wonderful sustainability in schools program in Colorado. We're looking to expand that to Montana and Arizona as well. We're going to keep doing that work. We might have to figure out, again, a different path to get to our destination, but that we're not going to let this new administration stop us. Absolutely not. And if we are also launching a really wonderful C4 sister organization to the Mountain Mamas. And we saw more women running for city commission seats, county commissions, school boards, state legislatures than I have ever seen, at least in some of the areas that I was looking at. And so our focus with our C4 as we move ahead is making sure that we give women the support that they need, which is often different than, unfortunately, a lot of the elder white males that run for office. A lot of us have families, a lot of us have full-time jobs. Our campaigns will look different. The support systems we need will look different. So our C4 is going to focus on, making sure that we're encouraging women to run for whatever kind of leadership fits into their life and their schedule. So we're not lifting our foot off the gas at all. We're pushing harder than we have before. And we have to organize ourselves, come together, provide each other the emotional support that we need to kind of move through this time. And I love that Sarah started with how have you been refilling your tank? We have to continue to care for ourselves, care for each other, and then band together and fight. That is our mission over the next 4 years and really beyond. And when we fight together, to quote a really wonderful woman, we win. So thank you for joining us today. I hope that we'll continue to be able to be a support network for each other. And please let Sarah, Selena, or myself know if you've got any direct questions and just want to chat. We are here for each other. And I'm so honored to have you all part of the Mountain Mamas.
Thank you, Becky. And I know you have to hop at 12:30, so thank you for taking the time out of your training to join us and your lunch break. So we're going to just hop in here to talk about the results. And some of this, you probably already know, but because things are still being determined, things, I even updated from today. So, so we know who won the presidency. I don't think we need to go through that. The U.S. Senate will be under Republican control. There will be 53 Republicans and 47 Dems. They just called Arizona for the Democrat. So, but not enough, of course, to have a Democratic majority. The House is likely to go Republican. There's still a handful of races that are yet to be called, 11 actually. However, 5 of those lean Democrat and 6 lean Republican. So there isn't a path for the Democrats to control the House. And, again, just reiterating Becky's comment about, we are a 501c3. However, we know that one party has been far more climate friendly than the other, and that climate does better under Democratic control. We had historic investments under the Biden administration in not just climate investments, but workers within that funding scope. And so a lot will be lost nationally. So let's talk about what that is. Becky touched on this already around public lands. We do a fair amount of public lands here in Colorado, not as much as in Montana, but it will, certainly impact our work. We have been working on the Dolores National Monument effort for the last year, and I know other folks have been working on it much longer than that, and that is likely going away. We haven't heard officially, but our sense is that it will be sort of shifting from proactive to reactive and defending some of the gains that we made under the Biden administration. So we have the Camp Hale Continental Divide National Monument that was just designated a couple of years ago here in Colorado. We anticipate that being under attack and needing to defend that. We anticipate the Trump administration pulling back from the 30 by 30, that's 30% of protected land and water by 2030. The new administration has already promised opening up drilling leases. There was a hold on a number of public lands leases that are likely to be lifted, pretty quickly. So that's unfortunate. We can expect that. Oh, go
Sarah,
ahead.
Can I just say one thing? Those are tough losses. I will say and point out during Trump's during his first administration, we did pass probably the most substantial conservation legislation in certainly my lifetime. So I had the honor of leading the Land and Water Conservation Fund campaign for Montana and then sitting on the national committee for that effort. And so I always like to say, if you've left your house and walked down the street, you've probably been touched by LWCF that funds ball fields, trails, parks, playgrounds, fishing access sites. It does some bigger, here in the Mountain West, we have, some bigger land transactions to preserve wildlife habitat, promotes healthy forests, forest restoration projects. Anywho, that legislation passed, both components of it, both the permanent reauthorization and the full funding for that very popular, very impactful program, conservation program, recreation program during the Trump administration. So while we will be seeing a lot of these administrative rollbacks that will be switching our work to more defense, such as clawing back some national monuments, opening up drilling leases, things like that. There is still potential to do good, productive, proactive work on conservation and climate. So it's not great, but we do, there is hope. So think about that.
Thanks, Becky. Thanks for pointing that out. That's a good call. A good point to make. So moving on to the more negative stuff, we can expect that we'll be pulled back out of the Paris Agreement, and we can also expect attacks on civil service workers. I wanted to highlight this a little bit because I don't think that people really understand what the Civil Service Act reform is about. And that is really making sure that we have an effective, skilled workforce in our agencies, whether it's the EPA, the Department of Defense, Social Security, Department of the Interior. These are all career service workers that got their job based on, their resumes. And it's the most diverse workforce that we have in the country because there are good protections around that for the federal workforce. And you can't get hired and fired based on who you supported in an election. The reason that they put that in place is because we had a spoils system for many, many, many years in this country. And that doesn't lend itself to having an effective government. Trump has promised to get rid of that because I think, he feels like during his first administration, there was a lot of resistance. Like this is an important line that of defense of our regulations and the protections that our government holds for us and for our institutions, that like these workers really were holding the line during that first administration. And he recognized that because he couldn't fire people for not doing what he wanted them to do, which was sometimes breaking the law, he wants to be able to fire them. So I just wanted to point out that this is a very real threat, and we should be thinking about how we're defending our federal workers and in their role in protecting our institutions. So that's going to be something that I think we'll be looking at, and obviously has huge implications beyond climate and public lands. The Inflation Reduction Act was one of the historic funding buckets that I mentioned earlier, that or investments rather in climate, that's helping people access electric vehicles, getting funding for electric vehicles or heat pumps in your home, or making these transitions, regular folks making transitions to a cleaner energy in their homes and in their cars. And then as well as governments making transitions, helping build infrastructure to make sure that we have places to charge our EVs if we have one. There are a lot of implications that we'll be defending. And I think, there's some hope here. I don't, it's not like they can get into Congress on day one and repeal this thing, because it's massive and it's frankly quite popular once people understand what it is. And 80% of funding already went to either a red state or a swing state. So only 20% of the funding from this bill so far has gone to blue states. So this is a benefit that many Republicans who voted against it and continue to rail against it are accessing funding for in their state. They're benefiting from it. So I think there might be some hesitancy to just repeal it. But lots of implications for us there. Of course, the EPA, we anticipate there being rolling back regulations that protect our air and water. We anticipate the removal of Justice 40. This was an executive order, so this is something Trump doesn't need Congress for. And that was really to ensure that 40% of those federal investments are going to disproportionately impacted communities and communities of color. And we can expect that will not be a priority of this administration. Yesterday, the news broke that Lee Zeldin, who is a former congressman from New York, is going to be his nominee for this position, for this administrator position. And I found this quote about this person, because I didn't know who he was, but and so this quote is, "I think he has all the ability and political savvy to be a great deregulator." So we should, it sounds like he is far more politically savvy than the administrators who led under Trump the first time. And he's going to really be thinking about how to message this to the American people, to make sure that people don't think that they think that this is that they will be able to continue to protect our air and water, which we know is not not the case. Moving into the state legislature, sorry, I'm running through this a little bit quickly, so but I want to make sure we'll have time for questions at the end. So in the state of Colorado, we did a little bit better. I will point out that we lost a climate champ in CD8. I failed to mention that when I was talking about the election results. So Yadira Caraveo lost her seat to somebody who is not a climate friendly person. And so we're going to need to do some work to build a relationship there. And I have some ideas on how we can do that up in Adams County and Weld. But Colorado as a whole generally did far better than any other state in the country, which I think we can be happy about. Our Senate will remain in climate friendly hands. In fact, I was on a call earlier that where they were talking about, we actually have had some more moderate Democrats replaced with folks who might be a little bit more friendly on this issue. The Senate in Colorado has been typically a tougher place to pass legislation, and that may be shifting. So that's good news. The House had sort of the opposite effect. We lost a couple of seats. The Democrats lost a couple of seats, and there's a couple that are still outstanding, but they'll still hold their majority. So things can still get done. And we do have some amazing climate champions in the House. We've passed some really good legislation. So hopefully we will continue to get good work done. So as I mentioned, we have a friendly state House, Senate, and a friendly-ish governor. I think he probably looks a little friendlier compared to other people at this point, but he's not always a great friend. Colorado, as Jan mentioned earlier, has a very tight budget this year because of Tabor. So there is, basically no money for new legislation. But there are other things that we can get done. And I know there are people that are working very hard on figuring out, how are we going to be managing that and making sure we have good proactive legislation. And really, I think I heard the term this morning, Trump-proofing Colorado, to make sure that we are protecting the things that we have been able to accomplish under the Biden administration, including federal funding, and ensuring that the direction that our state has been moving in around electrification isn't moved back. But one example of, or one sort of casualty of this budget that we've already seen is that electric school bus funding has been clawed back. So we had $65 million set aside for school districts to buy electric school buses. They had one round of funding out, and then the second round we had been waiting for, and the state has decided we don't have the budget for that, and so they've clawed those funds back for now. We'll see if there's another path there to help out schools that are interested in electrifying their fleets. I also heard this morning that the Air Division is cutting 19 positions. So, this is all state budget related. Those positions are not currently filled. So but they will not be filled. And this is, an important division. These are important positions in a state that has terrible air pollution. And so, we'll be hoping that we can figure that piece out quickly so we don't lose ground. And we're still a little bit early to, there's lots of bills that are being thrown around, and Mountain Mamas will be working hard to figure out what our priorities are. But, we don't have time to go through all of that today, but we will probably be doing some of that at our next meeting in December, and certainly in January, we'll have a good sense of what that will look like. But, I think the message to come out of this is that first, and foremost, we are not giving up. We are doubling down our efforts on this. We are going to, defend our public lands. We are going to defend the IRA. We are going to defend the regulations that protect our air and water and the planet that our children will inherit. We are going to defend those in disproportionately impacted communities. And we are going to work locally. Like that is where we're going to get the most done, is defending what we have built in Colorado and potentially pushing further, working at the municipal level, working with school districts. There is a lot that can be done locally that we don't need the federal government. They will certainly make things harder for us, but there is a lot that we can do in our states. One other thing, this is more programmatic, but we're starting to put together house parties. I don't want to call them parties, I think more meetings, but we're already working on one in Arvada that will be at my house in the next couple of weeks. And it's really bringing, moms together to talk about how, what can we get done in the next 4 years? How can we support each other? What do we want this organization to look like under this administration, and how are we responding collectively together? This isn't something that we've done before, so this will be a new model, but we are really excited about the potential. And if you're interested in hosting a party or a meeting at your house, I would love to talk with you about that, because I think our power is in our connection to each other, and we all know people that care about this stuff, and we need to build our army of defense, and we have a governor's race coming up in this state. We have 2 years to hold the line, and I think we can do a lot together that we may not be able to do apart. So I want to pause. I know we have just a couple. Well, I see we have 1 minute left. Are there any questions? And then I can launch into this Ledge Team thing pretty quickly. Or comments. 45 minutes goes fast. Okay, I'm not seeing anything yet. Okay, so another thing we are launching that I'm really excited about is a legislative team in Colorado. We have not done this before. We haven't had our members be, I think that during the legislative session, this is the time when our members are the most engaged, but I would really like for you all to be leading this piece, as opposed to just getting the information and taking action. And I think there is a ton of great work that we can do together. This will be a committee that works on legislation during the session, which runs from January to May. We are going to work together to set our legislative priorities, to figure out, it's okay, here are the bills that are running. What impacts families the most? What's most exciting to us? What feels the most, likely to pass? We're going to design and build events to promote our bills and to support other legislation that's running that maybe isn't our priority, but is important. We're going to engage our lawmakers. We'll be doing trainings on how to lobby, what grassroots lobbying is, how to put together a lobby day. We're going to do that together. We hold a lobby day every year. If you are in Colorado Springs or Loveland and, just a little bit too far, that does not preclude you from participating, because there are tons of ways to participate remotely at our state legislature. You can testify, you can meet with lawmakers. There's lots you can do. from afar. And so we are going to make this accessible for folks no matter where you live in our state. And we're going to be engaging other mountain mamas in this work. So, you know, if we have a legislator that's problematic on one of our bills, we're going to be calling into that district and asking them to make calls into their office and make sure that they understand people in their districts care about these things. So if you are interested in participating in that or just learning a little bit more, please let me know. We're going to be sending out an email so you can sign up to get more information. But you know, you can always email me or put it in the chat if you want more information. We would love to have you join this. And I think it will be really fun and interesting and just learning how the legislative process works. Again, you do not have to have any experience doing lobbying or any policy, or you don't have to know anything. So all we need is passion and interest. And we will provide all of the rest. So just real quick, make sure that you have our next lunch bunch on your schedule. It's December 11th, the second Wednesday of the month at 12 o'clock. We're going to be doing house parties or house meetings. I called it meetings in this slide. That was great. And then, of course, launching the Ledge team. So, you know, hopefully more to come. I know we're launching into the holidays very quickly here, but would love to have you all engage in any and all of that. So I'll pause for quick questions or last comments. I know we're a few minutes over.
I just jump in and add, in terms of engaging in the legislative session too, what we continually hear from decision makers is they don't want a litany of talking points. They just want to hear your stories. So again, like, you do not have to be an expert. You just have to be willing to have conversations, and they'll just be delighted that you actually showed up. So thank you for considering.
Yeah, it's super fun. It is really fun. And the Labby Day is always like our most fun event based on feedback from our members. So hopefully you will join in. All right. So I think that's it, unless there are other comments. I see a few in the chat. Thank you so much. We're excited for the enthusiasm and hope you guys join in. But any other questions or comments? All right. Well, hang in there. We got this. And we'll see you at the next one. Thank you for joining.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.